So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, and their challenges, and what's really driving them forward. So, this afternoon, I'm delighted to have with us Ian Walker, who's founder at Ian Walker and Co. So, firstly, Ian, thank you for spending a bit of time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, your business, what you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having us along. I appreciate the opportunity to have a chat with you and your listeners. I'm Ian Walker, as Chris says. I'm a chartered accountant. My firm, Ian Walker and Co, is based in the city of York. We look after clients both locally and a little bit further afield. We have some clients as far north as Highlands of Scotland and as far south as the Isles of Scilly.
Wow.
But the majority are within 20 or 30 mile of the firm, really. I'm 56 now, so I've been doing this. This is my 40th year in accountancy
Wow.
practice. So we continue to, and I've always looked after everything from grandma's tax return, basically everything up to multi-million pound, multi-territory, multinational companies, and everything in between, basically.
Brilliant. And Ian, what would you say makes an A grade client for you? What would be the perfect sort of type of client for you?
Well, I suspect most people would think that that would boil down to fees, and it's not. It's not all about fees. It's about relationships.
Great.
And so our grade A clients are the kind of people who acknowledge that they come to us for a service and for a reason, and that they are responsive to suggestions and proposals that we might bring to them as regards possibly making their business more profitable, saving them some tax, or possibly both, which would be nice. And all bits and pieces relating to their actual business sector and their week to week, month to month trading. So those kind of clients who listen and ask the right kind of questions and benchmark what they are trying to achieve, and then we go back and we monitor and see if we're progressing.
Brilliant.
Those are our A grade clients, more so than those that just pay us the most fees, basically.
Brilliant. Love to hear that. It's to get that match of benefits and principles and values, I think that's so important for really strong relationships.
Absolutely, and also there's a certain, if I may use the word, certain amount of respect that goes in both directions.
Yes.
You know, we are very respectful and recognizing of anybody who enters into an entrepreneurial venture. It's not always as simple as having a job or a vocation, and um, and likewise, you know, we are only one part in that machine, basically.
Yep.
So a certain amount of respect from us to our clients is always present. We are very, very pleased to look after businesses in all manner of sectors. You name it, we look after clients in those sectors. But we're very respectful of what they want from us and the role that we play. And we're also very keen that those clients are respectful to us in terms
Yeah.
of, you know, responsive for replies, open to suggestions and ideas, and basically, you know, it's a bit of quid pro quo, a bit of back and
Yes.
forth, really.
Brilliant. Well, Ian, if we sort of start at the beginning, if you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into business and why this particular one for you.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting one. So, I'm a York born and bred. I was born in 1968. Beatles were still around then,
Brilliant.
and I went to school locally. And I chose to leave school as opposed to go to university. And I was quite simply sat in yet another geography class or history class, and thinking, well, I'd like to do business and accountancy and tax, even though at that tender age I didn't really know what it all encompassed.
Yes.
And I was lucky enough to get a training contract at a local accountancy practice that's not dissimilar to mine now. And I did my AAT qualification at York Technical College on a day release basis.
Brilliant.
That course was 3 years back then. I managed to pass that. And I went to work for a different practice to garner some different experience on different clients. And they kindly put me through my chartered certified accounts qualification, and I managed to pass that in 1994. So I'd been going, took me about 8 years to get through all that lot. And then basically ended up where I had every role from being accounts clerk to account senior to audit clerk to audit senior, team leader. semi-senior, all these different tags as you slowly go up the rungs of the profession.
Yeah.
And then I managed to get to a position where, come the turn of the millennium, where I found myself in a position as partner designate. So that the big game changer. So you were working towards becoming self-employed yourself,
Yeah.
and to join an existing partnership. I did that. That was a firm in Malton. Had some many happy years there, and after about 6 or 7 years at the firm, we ended up in a situation where I was very keen to, for want of a better phrase, contemporize the firm. We needed,
Yes.
technology was advancing. We needed to grasp that and utilize that. And possibly a couple of the partners were a little bit more on the back foot in that regard.
Yep.
So it was one of those amicable professional partner the ways. I think we wished each other well. And so I set up then, which was the back end of 2010, Ian Walker and Co. I set up just myself at the University of York, took an office there,
Brilliant.
40 clients, one computer, did all the regulatory transfers and all those all those obligations, and slowly began just growing the firm, increasing the team, increasing the client base, and slowly over the last 14 years on paper, but probably about 12 years as regards actual sort of shoulder to the wheel. Built that to the firm that it is now, where we've probably got 650 clients and there's 14 of us. And that's the way that we go forwards. And then the next chapter of the story is that in November of this year, so only a couple of months ago, that I chose to merge my firm Ian Walker and Co. with Morell Middleton, which are an established firm in York as well. We have a very similar client base, very similar outlook. Myself and Steve Morell went to school together and we
Brilliant.
qualified together. We know each other very well, mainly as competitors, but of course, same industry, same city.
Great.
And we have joined forces. We've all moved into Steve's wonderful offices up here at Clifton Moor in York. And we are now one large firm, and basically we are approximately the fifth or the sixth largest firm in the city now. So that's the potted history back from the late 80s through to where we are now.
Amazing. What a great story in history. And so when you're growing up, was this what you foresaw for yourself, or did you have different plans when you were a lad?
Well, I came from very much a working class family background. My father was an electrician at the carriage works, so building trains.
Right.
He then went into health and safety there. My mum was a cleaner, and then she went in to become a yoga teacher. So, lovely people, lovely upbringing, were wonderful with me, but very humble upbringing. So initially, the idea would always be that I would follow dad to the carriage works because that's what everybody did.
Yep.
And to be quite honest, it was my father that said to me when I was about 14 years old, I think you could possibly do something a bit different. And it wasn't necessarily anything better. It was a case of doing something a bit different. For some reason, Dad possibly foresaw that the carriage works might not be there for decades to come.
Yes.
But one way or another, I was encouraged to look at the professions, so financial services, accountancy, banking, that kind of side of things. And it was my sister who started the ball rolling, really. She took a job at one of the local accountancy practices and was in a situation where she was developing nicely and was extolling the virtues of being an accounts junior in a local accountancy practice. And I guess that rubbed off. So I decided to take that. I was very fortunate, and this was in the mid 80s, 85, 86. The times were quite tough then to
Yes.
get the opportunity for my training contract. And so I took the opportunity thinking I'll give it a couple of years and see how it goes. And I know it's a cliche, but genuinely never look back.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And uh, over the period of growing your business, what are some of the biggest challenges and issues that you've had to overcome, would you say?
That's a very interesting question, that one, Chris. Um, I guess the biggest one is getting the right team around you. Getting personnel who can prepare accounts and prepare tax returns and can exercise the technical work is tough enough in itself. You know, it's
Yes.
quite a technical arena. We don't have quite as many young people coming through the profession at our level that we used to do.
Yeah.
Um, but also, it's very important that we communicate properly and that we're able to articulate what our findings are and what our advice is. And it's finding the right individuals so that they can develop and learn and grow alongside myself and the rest of the team.
Yes.
That's the tricky bit. If I may, I don't think we've done too badly on that front. We've got some
Brilliant.
fantastic personnel who've been with me for a lot of years,
Great.
and for good or for bad, they're kind of a mini me. Um,
Brilliant.
but so yeah, so I think that's probably the biggest challenge. The second one that I must mention is the challenge of communication.
Yeah.
Communicating verbally and in writing on emails nowadays is not quite as easy as one might think, and it's very easy to misinterpret what we may
100%.
be suggesting or proposing. So that is an area that this firm and Steve's firm have always focused on is about being able to express yourself in a clear and concise way so that there are no misunderstandings and no gaps in that advice and that guidance, really.
Brilliant. It's something I find, and I work with people a lot on. And in fact, I say communication should not be done through text. It can be supported by text, i.e., this is an email telling you what we talked about, but it should be a conversation. At very least, it should be verbal. Preferably now we've got the ability to do verbal and video wherever we are, but you can't. It's very difficult to miscommunicate video and verbal but the challenge of text is no tonality to text. So
No,
you typically people read text in the mood they're in or the mood they think the person's in, rather than necessarily the mood that they're in, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah, it does.
Okay.
I think that's a very, very important point. We have a policy at the firm where we don't send lengthy emails for exactly that reason. But
Brilliant.
inevitably, clients do need advice by emails. It can't always be exercised face to face or over Teams and Zoom. But we're also always very guarded to follow that email up with a call and that
Absolutely.
email isn't too lengthy because nobody's asking for advice that runs on for chapter after chapter, but sometimes you find yourself having to express that. You can't
Absolutely.
do that in writing. You've got to be exercising that verbally and preferably face to face, really. So
100%. And even in the last couple of years, the ability to use voice notes and stuff on your phone, whether through text or WhatsApp, is makes it even, I think, even more efficient to do so anyway than spend the time typing. So it's, but yeah, there's without tonality and some body language that comes with video, it's so difficult to be really clear unless we're really, really clear on exactly the words we use. Um, so yeah, no, I totally get that. And so obviously those are some of the challenges you've had to face. What are some of the biggest learnings you've had about growing a business?
again, that's a fantastic question. Trying to summarize that's quite tricky.
What's the secret?
Well, um, well, I mean, one of a few of the early learnings that came my way that I've always remembered are one not specifically about accountancy and taxation, but it's more about business and the art of business. Was that I was once told that any business in any sector is like trying to bake a souffle, and it's only if you get all the ingredients
Ooh,
and all the component parts correct in
nice.
the right order and in the right mix, will the souffle rise and the rising being the profit basically and
Love it.
the cash positives. And that's always stuck with me because you can have a business and focus as hard as you like at it, and it may not quite reach its potential, but it might just be one small thing that's missing
Yeah,
and finding that one small thing is a challenge. But then once it's plugged in, then can you kind of never look back really.
yeah,
So yeah, that was one of the most educational parts, which is from an accountancy standing, that really got me hooked into accountancy and business was when I was about 20 years old. I remember working at the firm that I was at, and I put some draft accounts in front of the partner, and And the partner asked me if I believed that they were complete and accurate, and I was quite happy that they were. And but at this stage, I'm 3 or 4 years into my career, maybe 3 years into my career. And without looking at any of the working papers, he looked through the accounts and just said, I'm not sure that number's correct. I think you need to go back and revisit this number. And can you just go and check and explain this to me and come back in an hour or two? And I came back in an hour or two and I'd realized that I'd made two mistakes on two of the numbers. And the third number, the number was actually right, but it was actually by good fortune that it was correct. And that teaching there was not about me looking at myself thinking, how could I make these mistakes? It was, how do you do that? How does an individual look at those accounts and be able to identify where there are a couple of missteps? And that I was taught that by that individual, by that partner over the next 12 months, and being able to read those numbers like you would read a book um, was one of the key steps in hooking me into this business, basically.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And well, leading on from that, funny enough, that as I know, we're a business coaching organisation, so I'm keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general, who's had the most influence on you. And I would imagine that person had a fair bit of influence on you that you just mentioned.
Yeah, that obviously with 40 years in the profession, we worked at a couple of practices, specifically in my younger years, and the firm that I worked at around that age, when I was around the age of 20, the guys who ran that firm, the partners there, were a little bit different to the first firm that I worked at, insofar as they would sit me down and say, excuse me, they would say that we provide you with the platform to go to college to learn all the technical matters and the theory, and that's one side of the coin, and you must learn that, Ian, and you must be able to apply that, and you must hopefully be able to apply that and pass your exams. But the other side of the coin is the art of accountancy and business, and we will teach you that. And those guys took a lot of time and effort with me to teach me that artful side of business and accountancy, and a lot of it was about communication and about being able to accept businesses from all sectors of all sizes in equal measure. Obviously, not to judge, just to help, but also to be able to get you. And I was only a young man, but to get your head around the fact that we aren't just there to add numbers up, we also end up being troubleshooters. There are matters that crop up, there are problems to solve,
Yep.
and you can't hand them back and say, this doesn't quite stack up and we don't know why. You've got to get to the bottom of it. And
Right.
at that relatively tender age, that those learnings were absolutely invaluable to me.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And have you picked up any favourite quotes or sayings about business or success along the way?
Well, yeah, I have a few. The one thing that I do like is the keep it simple sunshine. I think some people refer to that as case keep it simple stupid. We refer to that as keep it
I
simple
like sunshine.
sunshine.
That,
You,
nice.
you have to be able to boil complex matters down
Yes.
into what really matters, and that's an art and an education in itself. So I've always liked that one. Let's just get to the bottom of
Yep.
what the actual ins and outs are. I'll add to that, but without any actual phraseology, is about trying to figure out what's important and what's just noise, basically.
Yes.
So you end up, specifically when you're busy or if you're looking after more sizable clients' affairs, there are certain matters that you will come across or you will hear about that genuinely do not make any difference. They don't make any difference to the accounts. They don't make any difference to the business performance. And they don't make any difference to the tax calculations. But there are other matters that crop up that are absolutely critical.
Yep.
And whilst I don't have a phrase for that, it's how to pick out the critical points and to
Yes.
try and ignore the noise, the static, really.
There's a general saying that I like, which is it isn't exactly like that, but it relates to I think it's similar about general things in life and in business from Tony Robbins, a guy called Tony Robbins, and one thing he said, I often say it really helped people relax because when I say because he says if it won't matter in 5 years' time, it doesn't matter now.
Yeah.
And we tend to just bundle everything into either a problem or not a problem rather than how much of a problem, like you say. And if it's not critical, it's not be critical in 5 years' time, maybe I shouldn't be quite so concerned about it right now. I don't know if that
Fine.
I don't think that's quite the same, but it has some similarities there.
I'd agree with that. I mean, other ones are quite obvious, but they are very true. I mean, every day is a school day. There are things in today's working day that I've had at the office that I've learned, and
Yep, me too.
that's how it pretty much is every day. There's always something to learn, and so that's important. And one that I also recall upon, but it's not necessarily a business teaching, is a great lyric from Tom Petty, which is half the things I worry about never happen anyway. And
Brilliant.
whilst yeah, and whilst that might sound somewhat glib, the simple fact is there is no point worrying and stressing over the matters or indeed the problems that come your way whilst at work. You basically just need to figure out to be able to identify them and to work out either on your own or preferably as a team what the answers and solutions are, because everything that crops up has probably been seen before,
Yeah.
and there is a way to remedy these things. So whilst that's not really a business teaching, I love Tom Petty, and that's always stuck with me.
Love it. No, I think it's a great one. It's a very good one relating to calling fears we call fears false expectation appearing real, because most things we're fearful of, it's the fear that's worse than the actual thing, and the actual thing probably isn't going to happen. It's
Yeah, quite.
I've done a fair bit of research on this sort of side of things, and I think the challenge we have is our our minds haven't evolved, our subconsciouses haven't evolved enough from a point where fear was helpful to us, because we 10,000 years ago when we walked out of our caves we might just be eaten by a big hairy animal on a regular
Yeah,
basis. We haven't decoupled the level of fear we feel from things like having a bit of a problem losing a
yeah,
bit of money in business. I still see business people have fear that feels like close to a fear of death on
yeah,
losing some money in a month. Uh,
yeah,
well, it's not fatal. It's even if the
yeah,
business really struggle, it's still not fatal. It's just a problem. Uh,
yes,
but I think the underlying physiology, excuse me, of our subconscious doesn't allow us to differentiate between.
yeah.
Like,
Agreed,
it's either very scary or it's not scary at all. And
agreed.
that makes sense.
It does. It does. It was one of the scariest days I ever had in my profession was that I was asked at the very early doors when I first arrived in Malton actually to go and do the audit for one of our largest corporate clients, and I had no idea, what this company was or what they did. And when we actually got to their premises, the site was absolutely huge. And we had a meeting with the directors. I'd never met them before, and they were explaining about what they did, and there were all manner of quite tricky areas for an auditor to broach, really. And I remember sort of leaving that meeting thinking, how on earth am I, as audit manager, going to be able to apply all that I've learned so far to a business of this size and of this nature? And somewhere along the line, somebody had taught me a phrase of about how do you eat the elephant? You eat it chunk by chunk.
Yep, brilliant.
And I just had to keep, so I ended up on site with my audit team, some couple of months later. And the audit team are looking at me to be the font of all knowledge. And there are elements in there. It was the unknown. It wasn't the I don't know what to do. It's I don't know, I don't know how this area of the business works. And you just had to take it one step at a time,
Yeah,
just one
brilliant.
one chunk at a time. And I've always remembered that. I think most business people and professionals will look at assignments and look at tasks that way, that you just got to take it one step at a time, and then before you know it, you've managed to bake that cake or cook that souffle.
Absolutely. Cut the soup. I love that. Love that. Love that logic. And any favorite books on business success, personal development that you have as your favorites?
I've got a few up here. Good to Great. It's a great book.
Great book.
By Jim Collins. That I absolutely love that one. There's an interesting one that I've got up here, which is why should anyone be led by you? And
Oh, nice.
that's an interesting book by a couple of guys, Goffey and Jones. That book's very interesting because that leads you into the difference between leadership and or being led. And obviously
Yes.
for a good proportion of everyone's career, you are in with the masses and you're being led. But then one day, a bit like my day on that audit, you find out that you've got to lead, and leading is a little bit different. So I find that book absolutely superb. I've always enjoyed reading that one. Some of these books I've been back to more than once.
Brilliant.
So yeah, so there's a couple for you. I think the key thing is he's been able to remember some of the teachings of those books and being able to recognize the times or the situations when you should call upon those teachings,
Yes.
really. You know.
And I think there's a lot. I found a lot in repetition. It's read a book once, that gives you a lot of value. But if you don't read it two or three times, then it's not going to embed. We're not going to
Yeah.
learn. Every time I read a book, a following time I learn something more,
Yeah.
because certain learnings were right for me at the point I read it first. Then another set of learnings are ready for me when I'm going to read it the next time, because I've
Yeah.
developed.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
so I completely agree. So thinking about learnings, what have you learned about yourself through your journey so far?
Oh, the yeah, very interesting question that. I think if you'd have asked me as that 16, 17-year-old boy going into this, that this is where I would be in my 50s, I would never have believed you really. I think the growth of this firm of Ian Walker and Co. and um, the times that learned times I had in York and Malton before that. It's all been a great journey. And it's been very, very fulfilling. And probably going back to a question that I should have answered with a few moments ago, is that um, the guys that I was working for in my early 20s said to me, the one thing that you will see in this profession from your desk is life. And that is absolutely true. And so I think I have learned a lot from the people who've worked alongside me in my teams and for me in my years as an employer. But probably more importantly, I've learned a heck of a lot from the actual clients that we advise.
Yes.
Those clients in the main are good people. They are determined, focused. They're trying to make a difference and
Yep.
trying to make a living and trying to look after their families. When I look back over the years, if I was ever to write a book, then I suspect the life and times of a Yorkshire accountant would be somewhat dull to most. But some of the life learnings that you recognize from the clients that you've advised over the years are absolutely fantastic, really.
Absolutely bang on. Well, there was a pretty successful life and times of a Yorkshire vet many years ago.
That's
So,
true.
and they were just normal stories about normal life. So I look forward to reading your first book. So, talked about your background and everything you achieved growing the business, merging quite recently. Looking forward now, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you might face, if any?
Well, working alongside Steve, and obviously merging the firms, that's gone exceptionally well thus far.
Great.
But there are inevitably challenges there, So,
Yep.
for example, internally we are passing our internal systems into the systems that Morel Middleton use. Their IT and their software is a little bit cleverer than ours.
Yep.
So whilst it would seem quite a procedural pursuit, that's not without its
Yeah.
intricacies, shall we say.
Yes, I can imagine
Um,
that.
so it's all for the right reasons, and the team on both sides are obviously behind all that. But at times it's a case of, well, I'm in the middle of this working for this client, and we've got to break off and spend a couple of hours because of that integration is really important. So that's number one. The second one is that as a larger firm, we are aiming to continue to grow the firm, and we have a very positive reputation. Both firms have a very positive reputation with the local business network here in York and extending a little Leslie, but to Harrogate and out towards Scarborough and Leeds. And and as a result, we enjoy partnering with those other professionals, whether they be, lawyers, IFAs, coaches, So not so much of a challenge, but it's ensuring that the same message of the wider firm is passed amongst our networking groups, as it were.
Great.
Um, we've got a couple of trainees that we would like to get qualified. Not so much of a challenge. They're performing well and
Great.
progressing well. But one of those guys should hopefully get over the line this year, and we all wish him the best with that. And then hopefully the next one will get over the line next year. So
Brilliant.
not so much challenges for me, but definitely challenges within the team for
Yeah,
those guys to finish off those remaining exams really. And we wish them all the best. They make us proud already. So
brilliant. Brilliant. I'm keen to know what you'd say to anyone that was thinking of going into business, Ian.
Yeah, well, that's a very good question again, Chris. I think the key thing is you have to identify what you're going to deliver.
Yep.
And I think it's very important that you don't get too hung up on whether you are or aren't the best at that, whether you are or aren't the best expert at whatever it is you're going to provide. You don't necessarily have to be.
No.
It's a learning curve, and any business is different in year three to how it was in year one. It's the same again when you get to year 10. So it's to try, without wishing to sound casual about it, to try and not be too fearful,
Yep.
basically. But you must be able to identify on what it is that you're providing or selling and be able to price that, not only so that you get customers and clients, but also so that you can make margin.
Great.
Um, I encourage people to believe in themselves, as you say, a positive mindset. There are times when you've got to be quite strong mentally. You will have a million and one things to do on any given week
Yep.
because when businesses are small and just starting up, one day you'll be the provider of your services or the deliverer of your products. The next minute you will be HR. The next minute you'll kind of be the bank. The next minute you'll be the MD. So there was a wonderful advert a few years back, I think, for one of the softwares that was like that, and that's very true. And the simple fact is nothing can quite prepare you for it. But
No.
again, you just be positive and take that one chunk at a time, basically,
Yep.
and try not to be fearful, and just be content to be able and to be comfortable in saying to people, "This is us, and this is what we do."
Great.
So some people, understandably, are very modest and possibly a little bit quiet, and it doesn't come naturally to possibly shout from the rooftops as regards matters about themselves. But when it's your business, you have to do that. You have to be able to project, as I say, project as much as you protect. So you
Nice.
protect what you've built or what you
Yep.
are building. You protect your services and you protect your team,
Yep.
and terms and conditions, engagement letters, clear invoicing and pricing. These are all protections. But by the same token, you've got to be able to project. You've got to be able to project what the business does, what it stands for, and what its ethos is, and what its pricing is. And sometimes that's a hard marriage, but I think it's fair to say that not many of us go into business knowing that we're brilliant at both.
No.
I think it's probably quite the opposite.
No. That's very good point. Very good point. And if you started again, Ian, is there anything significant that you think you do differently?
Um, I think one thing which we do have to be very careful about talking about these things, but sometimes the realization that invariably you will need to take on some debt to be able to take the business to the next level. And that's what I would refer to as structured debt. It's not debt as in just let's get an overdraft at the bank or a loan
Not
that
at all.
provides us comfort. It is the funding that you need to be able to get to the next level so that you are then making double the profit or double the
Yep.
cash
Brilliant.
positives. And I think it's very easy and understandable, and specifically as accountants, we're very prudent to think, oh, debt's a bad thing. And debt isn't a bad thing as long as you're
Yep.
utilizing that facility to the long-term furtherance of the business. And I think that's an area where specifically when I set up this firm, I was probably debt averse. And at that time, I was 42 years old and I'd been in the game for quite a long time. And looking back, I should have possibly, taken on a little bit more debt and rolled out possibly a little bit quicker.
Yep.
But in saying that, the flip side to us doing things a little bit slower meant that we ended up with a team that was built in, for good or for bad, in my image, with indoctrinated with the ethos of the firm, as opposed to us saying, right, well, let's take some debt on, let's get some staff in that we don't really know who they are, let's possibly go out and buy some clients who we don't know who they are, and just try and make it all fit. we managed to do things in a possibly slower but more structured way.
Yes.
But in certain businesses, the not taking on some debt and some facilities will hamper the business immeasurably. So I think that's an area where it's understandable not to want to get into debt, but as long as it's debt for a purpose, then we shouldn't shy away from it.
I think really sound advice. I think, I've seen time and time again that the reality for most businesses is debt is growth costs cash.
Yeah,
Cash is the fuel for growth. There are a few businesses that I've been lucky enough to work with where actually growth created cash. Lucky
yeah,
businesses to be in. There's one or two, not many. But if growth is going to cost cash, then we've got to find it from somewhere. And if it's not by structured debt, as you say, it's often from working way harder than we need to work. It can be our own resource, it can be lots of things. Whereas if we know, we always say from a marketing perspective, a great marketing strategy is one that gives you return on investment. If you know you put a pound
quite.
into marketing and you get £2 back in profit, let's put £10 and you get £20 back. The same with structured debt. If debt plus the interest that you're charged to service it is going to give you, for every £100 of debt you get, you're going to get twice, three times back. What it just makes sense. But debt for its own
Yeah,
sake, or debt for no reason, totally agree, has no
yeah,
point. But it's I think I see so many people work so hard because of a mantra of debt is bad, and I do feel that's the wrong man.
quite. Yeah,
So I completely agree with you, because I just see so many people work way harder than they really really need to,
yes,
in the wrong areas as well. Ian, they're doing stuff because they don't want to spend money in certain areas, and they end up doing all other jobs that they're not really good at, they don't really enjoy. Where
yeah.
focusing on the stuff they're really good at, and using finance of some form to support that it is common sense.
That's right. And then that leads us on to delegation, which, the delegation of duties and
Yes.
responsibilities is one of the hardest attributes to master, I think. I think at one stage or another in all of our businesses and our careers, we can all look back and think, I might as well do it myself.
Yes.
And yeah, great, because nobody knows better than you what you're capable of. But the simple fact is your business will not grow until you can um, engage people and get people on the team that you know and trust, that are listening when you try and teach them and educate them, but more importantly, are responsible once you delegate that work to them. And delegation is a very, very difficult mistress, for want of a better phrase, but nonetheless, it has to happen for businesses to grow.
100%. 100%. It's one of the first things I often work with the client on, is delegating a whole bunch of stuff that is they're not very good at, they don't really like, and is usually below their pay scale, pay grade. So
Yeah,
actually they're losing money by doing stuff like that.
exactly right.
They can
Yeah,
spend their time doing the stuff that makes more money for the business and less money over here. It was funny actually. I know you're slightly familiar with the Action Coach organisation, and our founder Brad Sugars, who you may know, he was doing an event many years ago, and he was talking about that principle of anything you could pay someone a lower rate to do something so you can spend time on the higher rate stuff, is sound common
yeah,
sense. You pay
yeah,
somebody £20 to do something for an hour, and you can spend that hour doing £100 hour stuff, you're going to make £80. And he broadened that out into his life. He says, "Look, I do that in my personal life as well. If I can save money by paying somebody to do something, so I can
yeah.
even just focus an hour." And he said, "I haven't cut my own grass for 10 years," and that's what he said.
Mm.
Guy stood up in the middle of the room, about 500 people, and he stood up and said, "But Brad, I like cutting my grass." And Brandon, he didn't mean this to be a put down. It was just his natural reaction. And he just turned around and said, "Well, that's because you haven't got a boat." And I felt sorry for the guy, but he wasn't trying to be put down. But he just said that was the point. It's like that's the thing.
Yeah,
That's the story we tell ourselves to do.
yeah,
And I see business owners saying, "Well, yeah, I could get a bookkeeper, but I can cheap. It's cheaper for me to do it myself."
why?
It's a fallacy, isn't it? And I think
Yeah,
I think certainly we, and it feels like perhaps you too, we need to dispel those fallacies of, you know, don't try to do it yourself. At the start of your business, probably you're going to do everything. That's absolutely understandable. But the quicker we can delegate, the better, I think.
Yeah, yeah, it is important, but it is difficult. And I think when people,
Totally agree.
team members start to struggle with it, then that is when they need a lot of support because
Yes.
I don't think there's one of us that was born to delegate. I think it's a craft that we have to learn and accept and just get on with and repeat, basically.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think yeah, no, I think who was there is somebody who was famously said he was successful as he was because he was the laziest person he knew.
Yeah.
But it's very, very few number of people. I can't remember what you need somebody literally not he's not a Branson, but it's that sort of level of person just said, look, I just always found ways of not doing stuff.
Yeah,
And in fact,
exactly.
interestingly enough, I did I went to an event a couple of years ago. There's a really great investment event in Leeds every year that it's called Climb. It's been going for a couple of years now, and it's familiar with it. But they had the ex CTO of Microsoft, a lady called Jennifer Byrne. Uh,
All right, yeah, yeah.
Really fascinating woman, inspiring woman. She said a couple of things. I'll only share one with you for now, but she said she was talking about delegation and and she said in the US they actively test when they interview C-suite executives, the CEO, they actively test them for their ability not to do things.
Really.
And I immediately thought that's going to be a total head screw for most business owners. Like, it's like for not, sorry, just get rid of that, to not to do things because it's like, yeah, no, your job is to find other people to do it, and that's your job. And I just found that fascinating because it's just like I look around the room and you can see so many people going, did she just say that? And it's like,
Yeah.
so no, I totally agree. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, look, it's been fascinating. One last question. Uh,
Yeah.
What would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back all that time and do so, Ed?
Oh, it sounds a bit corny, but you can do it.
Brilliant. It doesn't at all. Brilliant.
Believe in yourself. Um, uh, ensure that you're a good listener. That's absolutely critical. And ensure that you are open and transparent in your dealings, whether you're working for a boss or whether you are the boss. I think that transparency and the openness of matters is critical. So specifically in our industry, but we're not the only one. Guessing or assuming is not allowed. You have to
Absolutely.
have the answers, or we go and find out.
Absolutely.
And but yeah, but going back to my 18-year-old self, it will be exactly that. It would be just believe in yourself and give it a go. And I do
Brilliant.
remember my parents when I qualified were absolutely their reaction was wonderful, and they were very proud, and part of that was because nobody in the family had been down that route or done that before or even attempted it before. And at the time, as wonderful as it was, I actually found that quite hard to accept and to handle. So for me to actually accept and recognize my qualifications took a while. And but looking back, I don't think that was a bad thing. Never taken these things for granted.
Yeah.
So yeah, a bit of belief, a bit of just go for it. And if you're going to go for it, you give it your best shot. Basically, I think that's
Brilliant.
what I would have told myself.
Wonderful words and very sound advice for anyone, I think. So it's been fascinating to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time today. And for anyone that's interested in contacting you or the business, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, just look us up on the internet, obviously in Walker and Co. And there's a portal there where you can contact the office, or obviously just give the office a ring or drop an email to office@ianwalkerandco.co.uk, or myself, which is the same but with Ian in the front of it. And yeah, just give us a shout. We actually exercise a lot of work with local organisations like NIBEP, which is about teaching youngsters about business and the role of business and
Okay.
careers in business and finance. Um, we work with those guys, and we do some other bits and pieces with what was previously the local enterprise partnership, the LEP, which is now the mayoral combined authority.
Yes.
And we're promoters of the profession and
Right.
promoters of business as a role, its role in the UK economy, but also as a route for youngsters to get a career.
Brilliant.
And having a career in accountancy, as is in many other professions, is still a wonderful thing, and it's
Yep.
still a wonderful opportunity, despite the changes over the last 40 years.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, as I say, thank you so much for your time today, Ian, and be good to swing by another 6 to 12 months and just see what the next developments have been.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, for now, thank you so much.
No, thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me along, and thanks for all the listeners for spending their time listening.
Brilliant.